discover your greater life experience as we dive into the stories that need to be told. Angelic Oracle Kira Raa leads you on a journey of enlightened perspectives as she weaves together the elements waiting to be revealed and often not seen. Each week, co-hosts reveal their secrets and invite your sharing. A fascinating and dynamic hour that will leave your heart smiling and your soul singing. And of course, Kira Raa's famous mini soul readings. Be sure to call in. Ready to be amazed? Here is Angelic Oracle Kira Raa.
Namaste, beloved ones, and welcome to Soul Mirrors. What is your life reflecting right now? My heart is beyond honored that you have chosen to be here tonight. And I'm sure you're already feeling it, right? Notice the energy. You know, tonight I put together this graphic for those of you that are watching us via video, and for those of you that are at home listening. We are under the water together. And as we are gazing through this crystalline clarity, extraordinary moment of co-creation, this beautiful full moon that is already revealing itself is calling forward a birth. I want you to breathe that in. Are we not water? Are we not birthed through water? Are we not the blessing of the water? Tonight, do you have a glass of water? Because if you do, say thank you. Not to the water, to Gaia, then to the water, then to Gaia. And what you discover is there really is no difference, is there? One is the lifeblood, the force of the other. The two are one. All is one. And in this moment right now, in this May moment, remember, this is a month of what? It's a month of choice energy. It's a month of truth. It's a month of really paying attention to the mastery presence that is inviting you to lift into a new field of conscious expansion. It's a moment where your dreams are honestly coming true, if you're open to it. And remembering that weaving it all together is that flow of divine consciousness. The flow of divine consciousness in May has been a restorative moment of choice, a moment that says to the self, I am here, I am ready, I am open, guide me, where the ego can really relax. And in that relaxing, in this moment, as this Mercury energy is being recorded, forgive us, but as that beautiful energy is starting to come forward, what is happening is that each being right now is being up-leveled in this energy. And we're right now, Tuesday, if you're catching us in the live broadcast, Tuesday, right now, we are in the middle of this. And for those of you catching us in all the other broadcasts, we are in it. I'm just going to take in a breath for a moment and remind us that as we are here, as we are in this moment of coming together, the Ave Sa healing presence is the heartbeat that simply says, Ave. What is the Ave? It's the Ave Maria. It's the hail. It's that smile. It's the smile when we have transcended the limitation that seeks to keep us from knowing truth. I am, just a sneak preview, so excited about tonight's co-host. This is someone who I was blessed to meet through a mutual friend. And from the moment I landed on her website, vedaaustin.com, my heart sang. Because in this moment, in this planetary existence, in the energy that we have chosen to be in form with right now, we are collectively remembering coming together because our water is speaking. And you can take that sentence into so many different experiences. And that's the gift of the water. It's limitless, it transforms, and it always is able to find a way to be. No matter what is thrown into it, no matter what it has to deal with, it is a resilient being. And so imagine right now, in this full moon lunar eclipse up level, imagine that all of us have this moment. And this is why the timing of my guest, poor thing, I rushed her on the air. I was like, you've got to be here. In this moment right now, this is the moment where we have an opportunity to open and ignite a window of up-level energy that is going to take us to the June solstice. And so here we are right now, and we are giving ourselves right now, this full moon lunar eclipse, like a rainbow bridge up-level. So imagine that we have an opportunity to say, okay, enough is enough. We see the fear, we see the anger, we see the doubt. Maybe it's trying to get back all over you. Maybe it's time to dive into the water and float, knowing our true nature and not being afraid to live it, be it, and own it. I want to invite all of you right now to bring your hands to your heart. I want to do it with you. So let's bring our hands to our heart. And notice your heart. Just notice your heart. This beautiful heart, this beautiful, beautiful heart of density, this heart that exists within a body of form, has been beating with you, containing all the seeds of your ascended presence. Just like a beautiful little jewel floating around, having a great time until you're ready to let it float through the river of your divine consciousness. I want you to feel that heart. Feel that jewel right now. And notice the smile that's arising from deep within you. It's a smile that is very, very, very awake. It is a smile that rises from that love of this experience in its totality. It is the smile that ignites the compassion that lifts us from witness to witnesser. And it is the smile that invites us to expand beyond the paradigms that seek to limit us without any judgment. And I want you to breathe in through your nose. And as you do, in this energy, in this moment, breathe in Ave. Let's breathe that in together. Ave. Beautiful, right? Now I want you to go back to that beautiful heartbeat and notice it again. And we're going to breathe in that Ave through the nose. And on the exhale, we're just going to offer that infinite presence of the Sa and lift our frequency just a little higher before I bring in our extraordinary co-host that I love with all my heart and soul. And so right now, feel that gift, right? Let's just receive the blessing. 8 billion people on the planet, and we've all aligned to be here. This is a miracle in motion. So, hands on our heart, connecting, feeling already the joy-filled gift of this connection, this moment. We're going to breathe in that Ave. Sa. And that Sa is the expression of the infinite. Notice how you feel. And notice the energy that we have collectively called forward in this moment. Notice what happens when we are consciously calling in our breath, consciously seeing each other as the highest manifestation possible for this exact moment. To be able to know all of the infinite potentialities and to see why we have lined up right now. We all know we live in a moment where if we choose to, we can really dive into density and have one heck of a great density time. And as Archangel Zadkiel always shares, if you're going to do it well. Go in and do it, right? And for those that are seeing this, for those that are the water, that feel the water, that are creating in this moment right now, it's like a basking of a crystalline shower, isn't it? It's beautiful. Constant flow. Then this is the moment that we have waited for and that we knew was coming. The moment when the master that has been inside of each one of us has been tapped on the shoulder to come out of retirement, stand up, and be with this body of form. It's a time where the ego self, which is very tired and very afraid and very concerned, can honestly sit back and say, thank you, I am so glad you're here, I'm exhausted. And the master can come in and say, I get it. Here's a juicy cup, sit in the back seat, let's go have some fun. Because that's the moment we're at. And so as we come together in this moment, as we breathe into this moment, I want to share one more thing with you, and then I'm going to be bringing in my extraordinary co-host, Veda Austin, and remember that's vedaaustin.com. So I want to share with you all right now, check it out. This is the final week of the May Up-Level calendar. Those of you that have the Up-Level calendar, you already have this at home. You've been watching this. So here we are. Look at tonight. It is so exciting. So tonight, the 25th, is that moment where it's like you're in the ocean. And you see that the whole May calendar has been about being in the ocean of consciousness, being in the water. This entire month has been about that. It has been about the co-creative capacity of this violet ray ignition. And we are heading straight into this extraordinary, where it is already happening in New Zealand, where our co-host is. I love this bridge energy. This incredible full moon total lunar eclipse up-level moment of expansion. And so as we breathe that in, I want to also remind you of how that ascended numerology is affecting that. And here it is, creation. This is what matters, my loves, is the creation. And you'll notice that on the body, the way the ascended numerology is lining up for right now, tomorrow, May 26th, is back into the cradle of birth, the water of creation, our co-creative nature. And so what a perfect moment to remember that there is always more. And so I'm going to put up one more share. And this one, I want you to really pay attention to. This is the amazing being that you are getting in one moment to be with live, who will be with us on the rest of the show. And I do want to remind you that if you want to get in the queue, go ahead. I forgot to start the conference and there's already people in there. So 517-208-1500, please get into that queue right now. And you're going to want to talk to Veda. I hope you've been reading, because as I mentioned, I'm just going to share with you how I had the blessing of meeting Veda and the incredible being that she is. This beautiful woman, not only is she brilliant, her story, what we're going to talk about tonight, and this is why I want you to see where her story took her. What she has been able to do, I firmly, with all my heart and soul, believe will change the world. Look at those photos down there at the bottom. And I'm going to let Veda tell you how that happened and why that happened. But as you feel into Veda as a person, what I know you're experiencing, and I know a lot of you have already been calling me, I got the book. You want her book. This is a moment where we cannot deny the living essence of water and how critical it is that we remember we are water. And so without further ado, I want to bring in someone who I've had the pleasure of speaking with several times now. And beloved Veda, thank you. Thank you for being here in the brilliant sunshine midday New Zealand moment. Welcome, my love.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I'm here in the future and it's looking beautiful.
I love it. I love that the future is brilliant sunshine. And I know that a big part of that is because it's you. And it really is. And I do want everyone to know, this beautiful woman, I'm gonna cozy up in my chair, sit right here and grab my cup of tea is what I'm going to do. And so this beautiful woman, when we met for the first time on the phone, it was because your daughter had just finished. She was doing an anti-bullying presentation, right?
It was really, really touching actually, because I was bullied at school because I was always a little bit different, and I had my teeth stuck out, and a bit of an ugly thing, and people can be really, really mean. And I had to have eye surgery when I was 5, and I had to wear a patch on my eye for a long time. And so you can imagine the teasing that happened. But these days, I'm really daughter was out there, and they did a play around ways in which they can actually help people that are being bullied, and how other children can be part of being proactive about helping others when they see something that's not right.
Well, it touched my heart so much, and it was just so reflective of how beautiful you are in every way. That you were in your car offering me this time, and I have to share, as I feel every time since we have been together since then, I feel like I'm just talking to someone I've known my entire life. And I really do. And I want my audience to hear everyone. Honestly, we need to support Veda in every way possible. This woman is changing the world. And Veda, I have to ask, I will not put you on the spot. My audience would sincerely appreciate the story of why you had that eye patch, which I am honored to know. And we do not have to talk about it at all. So it's your decision.
It's fun. Just started talking about some of the things that have happened in my life, which have been rather unusual, because for a long time I felt so different, and I kept it quite quiet. But I was born with what are called reticulating eyelids. So rather than just having the eyelids which come down over my eyes, I had these eyelids that kind of cross over the center. So they were clear and perfectly see-through, but they were very unusual. And in all the Googling I've ever done, I've never actually found anybody that's actually had them. So they're the same eyelids as sharks and lemurs. And I had eye surgery to have them removed, and when I was so.
Veda, honey, I'm going to interrupt. Honey, Veda, I want to interrupt 1 second. You're cutting in and out on your voice. I think maybe it's the distance, because we really want to hear you.
Okay, is this any better?
Yes, a lot.
Yes. Okay.
Beautiful. And look how gorgeous you look. Fabulous.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so just to recap that, I hope everybody heard that. But yeah, I had to have eye surgery when I was 3 days old to have these extra eyelids. So it was kind of sort of like, imagine being able to see underwater without goggles. I've always assumed that's kind of what that was what they were kind of like. And then when I was 5, they started to come back. And so I had surgery again, and one was more pronounced than the other. And so I had surgery, and I had this big patch on my eye and a little bit on the other one for a while. So we weren't sure whether I would be completely blind or not afterwards. So I started to learn Braille. And I started to also realize that without being able to see the world the way we normally do with our regular eyes, you can see so much when you're actually observing with your eyes closed. You're much more sensitive to the different kind of colors that filter through your eyes, and you are more aware of that heartbeat, of that flow of movement of blood, of what you're hearing. And so all these extrasensory kind of things start to happen. And I was very sensitive as a child to different energies as well, and not being able to see for long periods of time really helped to build that within me. And then when they took the patches off, I could see just fine. And thankfully, I've been able to see very well ever since then. So that was kind of an unusual thing that a lot of people don't know about me, and so my mum chose for them to be removed because she didn't really want me to be in a science experiment, and I was overseen by a retired surgeon who used to come and visit me, even up until he passed away when I was about 12. Wow. So I always felt a little bit different because I knew this wasn't normal by the time I was 5. But my mum was always amazing. She was such an angel, and she would say to me, you're just you're just a little bit special, and being special is a wonderful thing to be embraced. So my mother really was just such a walking angel. And so then when I was 12, I drowned and was resuscitated. So I had this kind of very interesting immersion and relationship that formed with water.
So we have to hold the phone because I'm not letting you skip over this. All right. So, and again, this is up to you, sweetheart. But Veda, honey, what you shared with me, and I will hold that forever. The water chose you. The water literally gave you a second life. And look at what you have been. It's as someone who has had a near-death experience myself, and many of the people listening have as well. We understand what it's like to not even know what you know, right? And yet when you shared that story with me, I saw the angels around you. I saw that you are truly here on like such a volunteer mission for humanity, and that I am bowing before your grace and beauty and discovery, because you validate all of us, because we are all saying the same thing, and you bring it into a space where everyone can literally see it. You, my angel, take the cosmic and make it visible, the ultimate alchemy. So if your heart is open, I have my tea, and I would love to hear that story again. And I get that it could be one you may not want to share, and that's really okay. Zero pressure.
Well, I in the last 4 years or so, I've started to open up a little bit more about some of these things, of which I've been kept so sort of secretive, because for growing up as a teenager, I honestly started to feel like I was just so different that I just wanted to be whatever normal was. And so I hid so much of myself in many ways, and in some ways I kind of felt like I was also sheltered a little bit, because my mum knew that some of what was going on for me was very, very different and very difficult for a lot of people to grasp and understand. But I used to ride horses a lot. Sorry, I'm just trying to hold my phone so you can hear me.
Thank you.
And so I used to ride, and a girlfriend of mine and I would go out riding quite a bit. And her dad had taken us out, and so we'd gone riding, and her dad was taking the horses back. And so we rode through the forest and down to the beach, and then he took the horses back once we got there. And we were really hot. So we went running down to the beach, and this particular beach is in New Zealand, and it has black sand. And I didn't realize that there was going to, how some beaches, when you go out into the sea, there's quite a dip really fast.
Right,
and so I went out just thinking that we were just going to splash around and have a paddle. But actually I went out a little further, and I felt something around my ankle. And and that was the last thing that I remembered, was this feeling of something pulling me down that was holding my ankle. And so then the next thing I remembered was being resuscitated and like vomiting and lying on my back and looking up. And I remember very clearly seeing the clouds moving past, and then kind of starting to come into my body, I suppose, and starting to hear all the voices and see all the faces of people around me. I remember seeing my friend's face, and she just looked so terrified and so horrified. And so then I was taken to a hospital. And my mum, they called my mum, and my mum came to the hospital, and she was there, and she was relaying what had happened to what they knew had happened anyway. So for 3 hours, I was missing, and they don't know how on earth I was alive, because I clearly didn't drown. I wasn't drowned for 3 hours, or else I definitely would be completely not here. Something else must have happened for that to even be, for me to be possible for me to have survived. So my body was essentially missing for a period of time, and then whatever happened. So my mum also told me about these 2 dolphins that had been found dead and with cuts on them further up the beach. And it's rare for dolphins to be washed up in New Zealand. I mean, I don't hardly remember any time where I've heard about that. But as a young person, I was about 14 when this happened. So I was just devastated. It upset me more hearing about these 2 dolphins than knowing that something obviously strange had happened to me and that I drowned. I mean, that was traumatizing in its own way to know that. But to know that these dolphins were dead and they were so close to me, it just upset me so much, and I was in so much trauma with it. And it was almost undescribable how their death and knowing about that had upset me in ways that I didn't expect. And then years and years and years later, like only in the last 4 or 5 years, I went into a altered state. Someone said, "Look, I think we should look at what happened. You know, what do you think happened when you were missing?" And I was very reluctant, honestly, to do it, because I was almost kind of scared to know. It felt big, it felt like a really big deal, and it was a part of me that had blocked it out for so long. But I also know that unless we really look deep inside ourselves and face ourselves, because we're all mirrors of one another, and we also need to understand that the water within us is also a mirror of us. And when we close our eyes, we can see how water sees us. And that's a very powerful thing to remember. And so I agreed to do it. And what I said was very strange. And I'll share to the degree that I can remember, because I was in this altered state. Someone actually recorded what I said, and I listened to the recording, and in my heart, in my essence, I know what I said is my truth, but it doesn't make sense. But it doesn't, on the logical aspect of things, neither does some of the work I do with water right now. It is so real, and it is stranger than fiction. Fact is sometimes stranger than fiction, and this is just the truth. But I said that I was pulled down by someone that had eyes like I had when I was born, and who looked human but not quite. And
you were pulled down by someone that had reticulating eyelids. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's what you meant by eyes, like when you were born.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
All right.
right.
I just wanted to make sure I was understanding. Okay.
Yeah. And so it was a kind of masculine, but quite, it felt almost like a brother to me, and was looking at me as we were looking at each other. I was drowning, I was in my physical human body, and I was also drowning, and he was looking at me with all this myriad of different emotions, like first of just like so happy to see me, and then second of, why are you drowning? You're not meant to drown. You're meant to be part of this. And was like staring at my eyes, and I could hardly see in the water. Like it was actually stinging my eyes, but I could make him out because he was right up close to my face. And so my body was drained. He realized that. And in this communication without words, I felt there were two of these kind of beings behind me somehow, and I don't know how, and it all sounds so strange when I say it. And I'm very sciencey and I'm very spiritual and I'm an artist, but it's like even me saying some of the stuff still kind of feels quite vulnerable to speak about, because I said it in this altered space. But anyway, so somehow my body was put into some kind of state of suspension, and the spirit essence of me, or the spirit molecules of me, or however you want to say it, felt like I was being moved very fast through a kind of vortex. And it felt so fast that I could almost hear the sound of water rushing past me. And then I kind of came up, it felt as if I was in a sort of body, but not. It's very hard to explain the sensation. I imagine it's what a subtle body might feel like rather than a physical body. So it kind of feels like there is a casing, but it actually, I don't know, there is this absolute freedom of movement. And so I'm lying on top of this ocean, but I'm no longer in New Zealand. I'm somewhere off the coast of New York. And so I know this because the person that was going through this experience with me was talking to me and asking me questions, and I was able to answer them very accurately. In that space, I gave her dates and times and all kinds of. I don't know how I knew that, but somehow I did. And so I looked up and I saw all these lights in the heavens and in the sky, and they weren't stars. First, it was like I could see stars behind them, that there were these bigger lights, and it felt like I felt like there was this beacon of light like shining on me, and there was a part of me that felt like I was part of that, but at the same time, where there's something where there's a lot of light draws a lot of different energies into it, and there were some energies that were very attracted to that weren't necessarily out for my highest good. So there were 3 dolphins that traveled, had come to support me in that experience in that particular place. And there was some urgency all of a sudden, it seemed, because I was just getting really comfortable and I was like experiencing this light, and it felt that there was a communication and that there was something extremely important that I was supposed to be doing within the sea, for these people essentially that had pulled me down. And it was just starting to kind of crystallize when I was kind of torn away, and I was taken back through this vortex kind of thing. And there were 3 dolphins that followed, and 2 of them were basically my protectors. And that's the way I described it. And then I was able to come back from being in that essence, or that spirit or subtle body, and come back into my physical body, which was held in some kind of suspension. And then I took my first breath, and then I actually drowned, and then my body rose up and was found by these people. But somehow I'd been gone for a couple of hours. But those two of the 3 dolphins lost their lives in some kind of attempt to get me back into my body. And so I felt very, very emotional about that. And of the very, very few people that really know the story, and now so many people do, I guess. Someone, my beautiful stepmom, gave me an incredible little. It was a shell carved with a mermaid with 3 dolphins to symbolize something that was very significant for me. So that was very special. And, sharing stories like that is vulnerable because, it's definitely outside of the realm of many people's possibility, which brings us into the work I'm doing with water. But that wasn't the first. That wasn't the only near-death experience, I suppose, that I've had.
Can I jump in? I want to jump in for 1 second because Veda, when you share that story, and thank you, honey. I mean, with all my heart and soul, this audience feels the blessing and knows the gift that you have just shared with all of us, and we are very grateful. And why my heart is so grateful that you are so willing to share that blessing is because when I experience your work, and let's get into that and how that came to be, I literally experience you are the water. When you share that story with me, it's as if the water itself said, you must let people know that we are alive, that we are beings. You are the gift of the water. For me, you're very much Excalibur, right? You're the gift of the water in form that said, please let those that do not understand be an emissary. And so thank you for sharing that story, because for those of us that are carrying a level of consciousness that sincerely honor and appreciate you sharing that story, it is a beautiful blessing to connect with you and your journey. And so bring us into what you're doing and how this extraordinary discovery came to be.
Sure. Well, I mean, it kind of feels like it's been so cumulative as I recall all of these experiences in my life, actually. And so I was in a really horrendous car accident about 25 years ago. Mm. And we went under a 7-ton truck, rolled twice. The driver was decapitated. It was one of the worst accidents in New Zealand where someone survived. And since then I've had 8 surgeries, mostly for bowel surgery, because the seatbelt kind of crushed my internal organs, but also helped to protect me in some way. Although I came to realize it's a beautiful story, actually, that there is so much more that helped keep me here in that car accident. And so this is leading to water, but I was sharing the story about the car accident, and so my son, when he was nearly 3 years old, his name is Rama, and he had never heard it. I'd never shared it, and I was talking to a friend about it, and this is quite some years later. And I was actually told I would never be able to have children by 3 doctors. So I had a child for every doctor that told me I couldn't.
I love that.
Yeah. And so just because all my internals were so crushed and there was so much damage done and so much scarring. But anyway, so my son was listening to this conversation and I was having, and it was kind of a bit of a slightly rainy day on that day of the accident. And so there were some details that he said that I know that no one else, apart from the people that were actually there, knew. And so after I finished talking to this lady, Rama, he runs over to me and he's like, and I'm like surprised he was listening. And he said, I remember that, Mummy. He said, I remember the window wipers and the tires. And he said, and I came down from the clouds, and he did this thing. He put his arm around me, and I put his arm around me, and he said, I went like this, and I saved you. And when I knew you were okay, I climbed back up the ladder into the clouds. And I'm like, oh. And he's nearly 3. And I'm just like the honesty and the purity that just poured out of this beautiful child that I was supposedly not meant to have.
Right.
Made me realize so much more, that there is so much divinity within this world and within these bodies of water that we are, and on this body of water that we are so blessed to be living on. Yes. And so it was such an honor. And so I had obviously on my last surgery, I didn't recover very well. And probably because I'd had so many surgeries over the time and too much anesthetic. And the doctors said to me, we found the showers of blood clots in your lungs. And I was like, how is this even possible? Because I went in for bowel surgery and now I'm dealing with blood clots. I've never drunk alcohol. I've never had a cigarette. I've never done drugs. And I've been vegetarian since I was 8. And I'm like, I just felt like my body's so clean. Why is this happening? And so they wanted me to be on warfarin, which is essentially a blood thinner, for however long. They would have probably kept me on it for much longer than I stayed on it. And I was fed fear for a while. And then I had warfarin for about 6 months or so, and then I had a scan and there was no clots, and they couldn't quite understand the exact reason why it had happened. So I stopped taking warfarin, and of course that's everybody's individual choice as to what they're going to do. I'm not saying that's good or bad or anything like that, but it was my choice. And so I work alongside lots of amazing doctors and alternative therapists and scientists. And a friend of mine who's a doctor who studies Ayurvedic medicine, he said to me, he's an MD doctor as well, a medical doctor, but he said, look, totally off the record, if maybe you could find a natural source of high alkaline water, emphasis on natural, not ionized or altered, and natural source. And he said that might be able to help get your body back into some kind of balance. So I was like, okay, well, that seems pretty simple, just drinking water. So I became the guinea pig of my own health, and I started to try all these different alkaline waters, and I did 2-week trials on each one. And alkalinity is water with a pH, which stands for the potential of hydrogen, which is over a 7. And so I tried various different waters ranging between 7.5, 8, 8.5, and I felt hydrated, but I didn't really know what to expect particularly. But then someone said, look, I know this old guy, he's got his own private water source. His pH is 9.9 straight out of the aquifer. And he's only really giving it to cancer patients. So I was like, well, I'd love to try that. So I went to see him, and I told him my story, and he gave me a month's worth of water to try. And after 3 days, I noticed this huge change in something so many people don't want to talk about, but it's such an indicator of our internal health, which is bowel motions. And after having so much bowel surgery, you really notice when things are working well, and you know what you should be looking for. And there are so many people, there's, so many countries are constipated, just full of constipated people. And they're sitting on the toilet trying to push out a little hard stone. And this is, for hours, and that's not normal. And so, you notice these kind of changes happen. And it's like, oh, I didn't notice that when I was trying the other waters. This is interesting. But the most visual thing was that after 10 days, I noticed all these bumps coming up on my arm and along my jaw that were really painful. And I was like, gosh, I know my body is like purging, but I don't know what's coming out. And when I had that car accident, which by this time was like 20 years ago, the windscreen went through my body. It crashed. It kind of obviously smashed. But the man who actually was driving, he owned a nightclub, and in the back seat there were all these crates of a beer called Steinlager beer. And some Americans really don't understand what I'm saying when I say beer, but it's the lager, the one you drink, not like the grizzly beer. And so there was this green glass, and so when the car rolled, I'd kind of put my arm over my face to try and protect it in the moment. I'm assuming that I must have done that because all this green glass went into my right side. And so between day 10 and day 12, I had all these bumps, and then I ended up getting these tweezers because one of them was so raised and sore. And I was like, it feels like there's something in here. It feels sharp. 27 pieces of green glass were purged out of my body within that day 10 and day 12. And it was just
how did that get you to the pictures? Because this story is incredible. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, well, it led me to that because I'm like, how can water be so transformative?
There it is. Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I need to understand how this is possible. Right. So that led me on then I trialed it on all different kinds of other people, and I realized that it really made a difference. I'm like, what makes it different? And so I then started to read all about the new science of water, and there definitely is a new science of water out there. Dr. Gerald Pollack is a very dear friend and a mentor of mine. He talks about the fourth phase of water. He's got an incredible TED talk out there. But I started to understand there's different states in water, and that I also started to simultaneously read about Masaru Emoto's work, but also someone who's much lesser known, but I think should be well known, and his name is Laurent Costa. And he has a book called Journey into the Heart of Water. He is French, and he was taking microscopic photographs of water, but he wasn't influencing it. So that's the difference, was he felt that it wasn't his job to influence water. He wanted to have an experience of share what water would like to reveal. And that's much more in the way in which I like to play with water too. And that actually he wanted to see what water wanted to share. And what he was capturing in the ice were these photos of faces and fish and recognizable imagery different to Emoto's work, which was in fact more geometries.
Right.
And so I'm like, I worked professionally as an artist for 15 years. And so from an artistic point of view, I did big oil on canvas paintings for hotels and restaurants and companies and stuff. And so I was like, oh, wow, that speaks to me so much because I can relate to that image. And then I thought, well, and then the other person that influenced me was someone who I read about, and he'd made an observation. His name was Thomas Hieronymus, and he was a radionic engineer. He's long since passed now, but he observed that when he went into a French meat market, he noticed that the freshly placed organs appeared to be affecting the way the frost froze on the glass behind it. So like the liver organ, the frost appeared to form in the shape of the liver organ behind it, and same with the heart, et cetera, et cetera. And he thought that even though the organs were no longer part of the animal was dead, there was still some life force energy within it. And he felt that was because there was water in the organs. Ah. And so that really made it very interesting. So I thought, well, I love reading about this stuff, but I want to investigate for myself. I'm very self-inquiring. I had a petri dish. I had some great water. I had, a connection with water through my own kind of healing and drowning and various other things. And so I'm like, okay, I want to see that the secret seems to be in the formation of ice. It seems to be in the way in which water can use its building blocks of ice to design. So my first thought was, okay, well, I've got this petri. I'm just going to put some water in it, and I'm going to think something, and then I'm just going to freeze it in my freezer, and I'm just going to see what happens. But it was really just basic as.
I love it.
And so then I'm like, okay. So then I was looking in the water in my petri dish, and there was a bit of fluff in the water. So I was like, oh God. And so I put my hand in, to take the fluff out, but my conscious, strong thought was, I wonder if my hand will have any impact on the water's memory. And that was the influence as such. I prefer to use the word inspiration these days rather than influence, because influence seems so arrogant. But anyway, so I put the water into the freezer, and I kind of forgot about it for a bit. And then I was like, oh, yeah, let's go back and check it. So I took it out of the freezer, I held it up to the light, and there was this image that I was actually freaked out when I saw it, because there was a hand, literally half the size of the petri dish, in the petri dish, made by ice. And what was so interesting was that my fingers are slightly crooked. I inherited them from my mum, and in the ice, the fingers were crooked in the same way that mine are, and it looked almost like an X-ray of a hand, except more. It's hard to explain, but anyone.
What were you thinking? I have to know, in that moment, what were you thinking? What were you feeling?
I felt like all this adrenaline actually was going through my body, and I was thinking, oh my God. I was like, oh my God. Right. And so I took a photo of it on my phone. And so it's in my book, and actually I've shared it on all my social media pages, and it's easy to find. Anyone wants to go see it. It's on my website too.
I'm going to put up, while you're talking, I'm going to put this up again so people can be.
Okay. And I can share what about those two.
Is that share? Are we seeing this? Did I do the wrong share? Were you seeing it okay?
No, I could see it.
Okay, great. All right. Forgive me. I'm going to put it up again. There we are. Okay.
That's fine. So I saw the hand. And then the next thought was, well, if any water is going to be naturally informed, it's going to be the ocean. So I went to the ocean, got some seawater, froze a very thin layer, because seawater freezes slower than fresh water. And I took a photo of the image that appeared in that. And it was this perfect fish with like fins and this perfectly round eye. And I'm like, oh, okay, there is something in this. This is not a coincidence anymore. And that's when my freezer became my most used household appliance. And so, and then as over the years of doing this, and I have well over 10,000 photos of water kind of responding in this way. So if anything, the body of work is the evidence of it, even if people find it so difficult to believe that this is possible. There's so much, it's so frequent, and it happens so often, and I have so many photos that it's no longer coincidental. It can't come into that bracket of coincidence anymore. And so I started to fine-tune my technique. And I realized, after learning more about the newer science of water, that there is a liquid, solid, gas, but also a type of gel. And that type of gel is the type of water inside of our cells. And so I was that gel state really interested me. And so I started to pull my petri dishes out earlier and earlier and earlier to see the state they were in. And I started to observe that there's two types of water in water. There is informed water and uninformed water. And the informed water that's picked up all that information adheres to the bottom of the glass petri dish much faster than the uninformed water, which stays liquid. So I started to realize that actually I now only photograph the informed water, and that gives me more of a 3D image. And you wouldn't believe it takes under 5 minutes for all the work I do now with water. I don't keep them frozen in the freezer for ages and ages. In fact, what now I'm getting is much, much clearer imagery, and so quick. And so the images that you were showing there, one was of my friend Wendy's face. And so I used her photo as an inspiration. I put the petri dish of water on top of her photograph for 30 seconds. And then I froze it using my technique. And then the image in the ice is basically water's interpretation, artistic expression of her face. And then the other one, because I'm not limited to all of these ways in which I can communicate with water and in which it likes to communicate with me. So I said, do you know who I am? And so water designed this perfect VA, but why I've accompanied that with my initials is purely just to show people that that's how I link my initials. That's how I've been doing it for years and years and years.
Wow.
And so I've asked questions like, what was your first memory to water? And it so surprised me, because this is a relatively recent one that I did, and I got this incredibly elongated head and this kind of face that looked very how we imagine an alien face to kind of look.
I want to see. Okay, so I have to interrupt you and first say, please send me that picture. I want to see it.
Oh, I will.
Oh my gosh, please, please, please. And we are out of time.
No.
Because it is just that amazing. So I first want to say to all of my callers, I am so sorry we didn't get to you, but aren't we glad that we had this time with Veda? The website is Veda Austin, Veda Austin, AUSTIN.com. You must get this book. And Veda, you must come back, honey. We are just scratching the surface. There is so much to share. So promise me we'll get you back in the future on the show.
Oh, I promise. I promise.
All right. I love it. Well, thank you, Veda. I am so grateful to have had this time with you this evening. I know that all of the